G'day, Chris Walker here. This part of the Walker-Chi process is the explanation of exactly how to, on a daily basis, develop the habit of living and walking and talking the Walker-Chi. In other words, we go out in the morning, we do the practice out in the open, but what we really want to do is to be able to walk that talk. We want to be able to uh, walk our purpose. We want to be able to walk with spirit. We want to be able to walk with an open heart, and we want to be able to do Walker-Chi all day, without all the arm movements, of course. And so this is the purpose of this particular video, is to just explain how to walk the talk of Walker-Chi. You remember before that we had this graphic when we talked about body, mind, and spirit, when we talked about vision, inspiration, and purpose. And it's really important that we keep this focal point in mind, that we are a four-level being. Us, or you, are at the top in the green. Your blue, your red, and your grey are there in your being, in your total humanity. And from each of those three levels, we think, and then from the fourth level, the green, we operate. So how we interact and operate with the outside environment and our outside world is the green. And I consciously made the green that color for our interaction with the outside world, to make sure that you recognize that biophilia, or the awareness of nature around us, will make that interaction, will make the body, mind, and the spirit, let's say, it'll bring them up in a healthy aligned fashion, and it will help to have that happen. So let's talk one by one. Let's go firstly down past this self on the outside. We'll get to that a little later. We go to the spirit. Now, we've said that the vision is the important part of the spirit's energy. But how does that translate into everyday action? And the answer is the word balance. Balance, when we feel that we have seven visions, we get this sense of looking at life with a balanced eye. Now, most people look at life with one eye. They see good, 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 bad, 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 right, 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 or wrong, wrong, wrong. And the word or is placed in between the options. And that is the mass consciousness, and an understandable way to look at life, because it distills it, it commercializes it, it makes it theatrical, it makes us attractive or repelling, it drives into commercial advertising, it drives into all the corporate motivational aspects, and most of the training and education in yoga, meditation, business, art, is built around emotion, and emotions are lopsided thoughts. So at the level of spirit, however, when we talk about balance, we know that an emotion is having an argument with the spirit, that the spirit comes out, enthusiasm or vision comes out, when there is a balanced thought. Now, that's frightening for some people. They go, if I balance my options, I don't have a preference. I don't have a leaning to one way or the other. And it's an understandable fear. But the experience one has when we get a balanced mind is that our intuition, our inner voice, speaks louder than the outer voices, the outer voices being emotions, and the inner voice gets a voice. Now that means to live your vision, you need a balanced mind. So let's say that every time you experience an emotion, either a positive or a negative, or an elation or a depression, or infatuation or a resistance, or a attraction or a repulsion, when you got those all words happening, elation or depression, which means, oh, I'm really high, or ooh, I'm really low. Infatuation, which means I want something really badly, or resentment, which means I don't want it ever again, or attraction, which is pretty obvious, and repulsion. Now, the partners, those three groups of words, are signals that emotion has come up and destroyed the space of the spirit, and therefore the vision is no longer a vision, it's a fantasy. And the fantasy has become entangled with muddy water and grey areas of ambition, and we've become, let's say, what they call a futurist. We're our body is here, our mind is here, but our vision is of us being in the future in a better place. And it's motivating, but it's also very dangerous, because what we don't appreciate in this moment right now, we lose. And so sometimes running towards the future, we get something, but we lose something we had and didn't really realize how important it was in the process. So the first step in the Walker Chi, walking the talk of the Walker Chi in everyday life, is a balanced mind to liberate the spirit. And the spirit is containing the vision. The second step, which is the mind, and we'll go to that slide right now, which is the red. The second step is to liberate the mind from its let's say, complexity. We do tend to overthink things, and we therefore tend to put weight on priorities that are not our own, and the word should is most commonly used to describe a situation where someone else's values, or some values that we've read in a book, are being imputed against what we're actually doing. So we go, I should be taller, or I should be shorter, or I should eat more, or I should eat less, or I should be happier, or I should be sadder. And those shoulds are comparatives, and they are the root of mental health problem. And quite often people try to solve mental health problems by jamming should words down someone else's throat. It's not necessarily the wisest thing to do, because one should to another should is really not a liberation at all from a problem. It's just shifting the problem to another day. So to get your mind free, we become we become very committed to not being ensnared by somebody else's priorities, which means somebody else's values, which means our reaction quite often to someone that we don't like or we do like. So mind plays a funny little trick. It wants to be right all the time. So if dad and mum, we judge them negatively, we will try and be different to them, which means we've reacted to mum and dad, and we've gone in that direction. If mum and dad were very good, we want to be like them. So we'll want to be then. So in both cases, we'll say the word should. I should be like my dad, I should be like my mum, or I shouldn't be like my dad, or I shouldn't be like my mum. Now, every single person you meet for the rest of your life is just mum and dad in another package. And very often, the character traits of dad can be found in women, and very often the character traits of mum can be found in men. So it's not a sexist type operation where all mum's character traits end up being in the women, and all dad's in the men, Very often it switches over. It depends on your judgment and how you breed your thoughts. So the word we use in mind is, am I centered? Am I centered? Now, center is a great word, because it means somewhere between the past and the future. So we get mental balance gives the liberation to the spirit. Centering our breath, centering our body physically, centering our thoughts in this moment right now, centering brings us into this very powerful space where the word should is locked out, and we are who we are. And in that moment we say, I deserve to be loved for who I am. And the first person who has to undertake that mission to love us for who we are is ourselves. So this is a very important point, to go from to walk the talk, to Walker Chi. We do the spirit, we get balance. The mind, we get centered. We get centered physically, we get centered emotionally, we get centered breathing, we get centered between the left brain and the right brain. In other words, we don't prioritize rationality over emotion, and we don't prioritize story over rationality. What we say is somewhere in between the two. We are centered. We are in the moment, here, right now, in presence. So let's now move to the body, and which is the last of the three. And we see here that there are 7 areas of life. We've got the body as really ground zero for everything that goes on. If your body is not well, it's hard to do good if you don't feel good. So if your body has not got stamina, it's not got health, if your body has taken the liberty to talk you into eating whatever it wanted, to talk you into solving your mental problems or spiritual problems with food or sex or greed or spiritual sloth, then your body has been looking after you. It's not a negative thing, but the question is it the best teacher? Now, when we're 5 years old, our body is our only teacher because it tells us what's hot and cold, what's hard and soft, and what tastes nice and what doesn't taste nice. So our body is a very major steering ship when we're very, very young. But as we start to integrate the higher levels of self, we move to the mind as we become teenagers and as we become young adults through university. The mind starts to become the dominant force, and the body may or may not, but usually does start to say, well, I've had enough flirting around and I've had enough whatever. The mind, I want something bad enough in my mind that I will cause my body to be healthier. I will cause my body to be, let's say, not my dominant or not my controlling force. I will force my body to follow along. And then we get some discipline and exercise, and we start to eat right, and go on a diet plan, and go to gyms and do all that sort of stuff. So it's very good to see the evolution of even one person's life through body, mind, spirit. And of course, at the end of the day, that person will be asking for a vision far greater than what they'd ever envisioned, because most people achieve their vision at between 25 and 35, and that's when depression and sadness and frustration hit, because then they start groping for Groundhog Day. They want more of the same, more, when really it may be time to revision and reinvent their whole outlook on life, because they've achieved it. It's time to be restarted or reborn or whatever the word is, certainly reinvented. So the body sits down there, and we get to this and we think, well, what daily measure could we apply to the human body to know whether we are evolving and building stamina and strength, and we're building health and all the things that are very essential to underpin the creativity and the stimulation and the inspiration of that centered mind, and to then give power and light and force to the spirit, which is the vision, which is the balanced perspective of the 7 areas of life. So what word could we use for the human body that would very quickly define and cut through a lot of the rhetoric around this? And the word is calm. But we're not talking about yoga calm or meditation calm. We're talking about nerve calm. So, for example, if I said, here, you can do a bungee jump, and I put the bungee cords on your feet and stood you on the edge of the precipice, and I said, hold this cup of water which is filled to the brim. Would you be trembling, or would the water be flopping everywhere? If you've just woken up in the morning and you're sitting with the family and you hold your hand out and hold a cup of water, is the water trembling or is it staying still? You're about to do a keynote speech. Is the cup of water trembling or is it standing still? Your nervous system talks, and it burns fuel. And if you're burning fuel in nervous tension, then your mind and your spirit have not got a solid foundation to live on. Therefore, your body is going to be your, let's say, your weakest point. It's going to be like trying to walk on water. And I don't know about you, but I'm not ready for that particular exercise yet in my life. So the calm nerves are the secret. Now, many people I meet have the idea that to get out of trouble, they shrink. And what I've got to say to this is, it's really important to understand that life is about continual expansion. So if you're in a stressful job and you're looking for a new job, look for one with more stress. Therefore, you need to be able to handle the stress where you are before you move to the job where you want to be. If you say, I want to do what I love and love what I do and be paid a lot of money for it, that's the most stressful job on earth, because you're doing what you love. You'll be very attached to it. You'll be loving what you do, and therefore other people will become quite annoying and potentially quite distracting, and you want to be paid a lot of money for it. Not everybody wants to pay you. So, it's great in theory to say that I want to be inspired and live a good life and do my thing, but at the first sign of danger, you find people shrink. Now, what happens is, what they're basically saying is their nervous system can't cope with the pressure. Now, that's because people shy away from the cutting edge of tension. And at the cutting edge, just before you meet tension, there's a very important point that we all get to. Nature evolves us at the border of chaos and order, or tension and calm, or tension and not tension, if you want to call it two things. And so the evolution of your nervous system requires stress. It requires you to be under the pump. It requires you to be doing a job that pushes you. It requires you to be in a team at work that doesn't feel comfortable. It requires you to step out of your comfort zone frequently. Now, that's the gift of work, because if you don't have a job that challenges and pushes you and threatens you and makes you step out of your comfort zone and therefore evolves your nervous system, you're going to have to do all that at home. Now, if you've got a relationship that pushes you, challenges you, and steps you out of your nervous system and makes you all weak at the knees, then that's not going to be the most compatible, most enjoyable home life for the children to be around. So it's wise to find a job that pushes your envelope, that you feel threatened and you feel some sense of incompetence at, and continually rise to that level of incompetence rather than just continually trying to find some level of what they call harmony or peace or whatever ridiculous notion has been sold to you in a should. So the nervous system of the human body is one of the most powerful recognitions and witnesses of the power of the spirit, because the spirit vision sits on top of the mind, which sits on top of the nervous system. If the nervous system fails, it all crumbles down. So what we're trying to do is think about diet, think about activities, think about lifestyles that push the nervous system, but not push it to exhaustion, but push it each day to confront its boundary. And that may be in the terms of physical thing, is doing a sport where you hit a wall and your nervous system can't deal with it, and then you pull back, and then tomorrow your nervous system evolves to the wall and you go for a new wall, or the next week or month. So that's how an athlete gets to the Olympics. At work, we need to say, I want to work harder tomorrow, not easier. I want to work harder the next day. I want to work harder. I want to work to the point where my nervous system starts to fry, just before it starts to reveal itself as in shakes or tremors, or in exhaustion or emotional overload. Just at that moment, it's the time you say, wow, I've hit a new point in my nervous system. And then you go and eat foods, red meats or good iron products or organic greens. You stay away from the coffees and the caffeines and the things that rattle your nervous system, and you try and build a nervous strength. So if you stood in front of 10,000 people in an audience, you wouldn't be trembling in a way that they could see. I remember at my university when I did my MBA, I was very nervous doing keynote speeches, but one lady there was so nervous she was getting up in front of the class, and there was only 30 of us in the class, so really it wasn't the end of the earth. She was so nervous that her nipples jumped up and down because her whole body got in the shakes, and it was like one of those bridges that get into oscillation. Her nipples got into oscillation. The poor thing was out there shaking for half an hour, and and it was just traumatically terrible that her nervous system, she'd been in a government job, she's very clever, therefore she hadn't really been pushed in the nervous system, hadn't been pushed in the academic side of things, and something like that comes and just cooks her, and she was cooked for about a month afterwards. Wasn't very healthy. So we need to evolve our body so that it can be our foundation pin, and then we end up, of course, with this graphic, the final one, where it's all one homogeneous thing. There isn't these layers. We have, you can see there written, we have a balanced spirit, we have balanced vision, which means we have 7 visions in 7 areas of life. We have a centered mind, which is in the moment, inspired, and we have a body on purpose. The reason and the recognition of that is that we will feel an extraordinary sense of nervous system calm. That's not calm mind. That is calm nervous system even under the pump. And we need to train that and evolve that and work on it every day. I hope this has been of some interest to you, and I'd enjoy your comments. This is Chris Walker. Have a great day. Bye for now.